The morning in Los Angeles began with a dull light, the light of days when all the best things are hidden behind a thick fog of calculation and lies. Brooke stood in her luxurious living room, her eyes fixed on the window, where the sunlight was not yet strong enough to clearly see the line between past and present. Her words echoed in her mind, an indictment of the man she had loved, saved, and hated more than anyone else. Deacon Sharp, his gaze a mixture of regret and pride, stood at the greatest crossroads of his life. He could continue to run, or, for once, choose a path that would make him an enemy to everyone, including the one he wanted to love. Brooke wasn't just questioning him, she was forcing him to confront his own soul, the moral fragments he had long discarded. Sheila was still there, a ghost that refused to die, a reminder that darkness never left those who held it. Taylor was something else entirely, a shadow of forgiveness, a chance to start over. But in this world, loving someone like Taylor meant dragging her down into the pit he had once sunk into, and that was something Thomas and Steffi both vowed never to allow. Deacon didn't answer Brooke right away. In his mind, the two paths were torn apart. He was tired of the fights, the judgments, the accusations that cut like knives into his flesh. He knew that if he continued with Sheila, he would lose everything: trust, affection, the chance to start over. But if he chose Taylor, he would open a new chapter full of danger, because this love wasn't just between two people, it was a declaration of war on the entire world around them. And finally, like a man accustomed to taking risks, Deacon chose the path that made everything explode. He announced to everyone he was going to marry Taylor. The words spread faster than the wind. In the Forrester Creations conference room, Thomas heard the news first. His face paled, his hands clenched so tightly that his knuckles turned white. In Thomas's mind, Taylor was the last symbol of purity, the mother who shouldered all the mistakes her children made. And now, that image was threatened by someone like Deacon, a traitor, a criminal, a stain on the upper class. Steffi, when she heard the news, didn't say a word. She just stood up, quietly left the light-filled room, to hide her anger like a smoldering fire under the ashes. To her, Taylor was not only a mother, but also the heart of the Forrester family. And now, that heart was given to the one the whole world had abandoned. Hope was the last to hear the news, and when she learned that Brooke had started it all, she felt her world fall apart. On one side was her mother, a woman who always believed her daughter needed to stay away from the darkness, away from men like Deacon. On the other side was her own father, who was trying to regain his honor and faith by loving the only woman who had ever seen the good in him. Hope stood between them, torn between them with no way out. She loved Deacon, not with the love of a woman for a man, but with the love of a child who believed her father deserved better. But now his every move was costing her. When Taylor heard the news, she couldn't breathe for a few seconds. She had saved lost souls, taught others to forgive, but she never thought she would have to forgive herself. Deacon came to her, not with roses or promises, but with the raw honesty of someone who had lost everything. In his eyes, she saw a repentance no one else could understand. And though her mind warned, her heart betrayed her. She loved him, not because he was perfect, but because he stopped pretending. Thomas couldn't bear it. His anger came not just from the fact that Deacon was taking away the mother he adored, but also from fear that his mother would be hurt again, that Taylor would lose herself again because she trusted someone who didn't deserve it. He sought Deacon, at first just to talk, but like all storms, once started, no one could control it. Words turned to actions, actions to blows. For a brief moment, reason was drowned out by instinct, and when Deacon fell, blood seeping from the wound on his forehead, Thomas realized he had gone too far. Steffi ran over, her face frantic, but Taylor was the first to kneel beside Deacon. She didn't see his guilt, only weakness, vulnerability, and something that scared her more than anything. She saw herself in him. As Deacon's blood spilled onto the cold marble, all lines between good and evil, right and wrong, seemed to dissolve. Thomas was dragged out, Steffi screaming, and Taylor still held Deacon's hand, whispering something unconsciously. She didn't leave his side, not even when the ambulance arrived, not even when they told her he might not make it. The news spread like wildfire. Brooke heard it on the phone and knew she had started the tragedy. Hope burst into tears when her mother spoke, realizing that their confrontation was more than just a romantic one. It was a series of tragedies that, no matter how hard she tried, she couldn't undo. Meanwhile, Taylor sits in the hospital, her hands still shaking with fear of losing the man she never got to spend the rest of her life with. And in a quiet moment amid the chaos, she understands that her love is no longer a weakness. It is the only thing keeping her alive. When Deacon opens his eyes, his first glance finds her. There is no distance, no fear, just a stark truth. They chose each other, against all odds. And in that very moment, out there, Thomas stands alone, looking down at his bloody hands, not knowing if he has saved his mother or destroyed her. Outside the hospital, it begins to rain, cold, heavy drops, falling like a verdict from the sky. In that rain, every character realizes that no one can emerge from this vortex intact. Brooke loses faith in herself, Hope loses peace in her heart, Thomas loses the image of a holy mother, and Taylor loses the limits of reason. As the hospital lights dimmed, leaving only a small glow in Deacon's room, one question echoed like the last thunder of the storm. Can love save souls touched by darkness? Or is it just a fire that consumes everything, leaving ashes from which no one can be reborn? The darkness of Los Angeles did not fall as usual, but was torn apart by fierce winds blowing in from the sea, carrying with them the salt air and the acrid smell of car exhaust. In the chaos, a figure quietly walked through the dark streets, his steps heavy but his eyes shining with an eerie light. It was Sheila. A thin rain fell on her face, but not enough to extinguish the fire burning in her heart. Deacon was still lying in the hospital, where a cold white light illuminated his face, the man Sheila considered the only remaining part of her collapsing world. No one understood why her love was like a curse, both gentle and destructive. Sheila did not love with her heart. She loved with her possessive instinct, with her fear of loneliness, with the wounds that had eaten into her blood. And tonight, knowing that Deacon was on the border between life and death, Sheila could not sit still. The hospital door closed behind her with a soft, metallic click. No one paid any attention to the woman, thin in her black gown, her wet hair plastered to her cheeks, walking like a spirit just escaped from a morgue. The smell of disinfectant, plastic, and rusted iron hung heavy in the air around her. But Sheila felt nothing. There was only one sound in her head, Deacon's heartbeat, beating weakly in the room down the hall. The door slid open, and he appeared, pale face, fur-in, breathing thin as a thread. Sheila stepped closer, her fingertips trembling against the back of his hand. In that moment, pain, love, fear, and madness all mingled. She whispered something to herself, like a vow no one could hear. Then a decision was made. Deacon couldn't stay here, couldn't lie between the blank white walls, couldn't be touched. He belonged to her, and only her. When the nurse returned, the hospital bed was empty. The windows were open, the curtains flapping. A cold wind whistled through the hallway like a hospital wail. No one had time to understand what had happened. Outside, Sheila struggled to carry Deacon out of the emergency area, her eyes flashing with fanaticism, her hands clutching him as if afraid he would disappear. The rain beat against her face, but each step was steady, as if the world were against her, and she was the only one brave enough to defy it. Sheila got him into the car, sitting beside him, her hands gripping the steering wheel until they were white, her breathing quick. Deacon's eyes opened slightly, seeing her face in the flickering light. He wanted to say something, but his lips only trembled slightly. Sheila smiled, a smile both gentle and terrifying. In her mind, this was not a kidnapping, this was a rescue. The small house outside the city that Deacon had once wanted to leave forever had become a gilded prison. Sheila wiped the blood from his forehead, changed bandages, made soup, did everything a lover would do. But there was something wrong. twisted in every action. Every time Deacon tried to sit up, Sheila put her hands on his shoulders, forcing him back down. Every time he said he needed to leave, she squeezed his hand until it bled, her eyes wild with fear of losing his soul. Deacon gradually realized that Sheila's obsession was no longer love. It was absolute possession, an emotion that did not allow people to exist, only to possess. For long hours, Sheila sat beside him, recounting old memories, the times they ran away, the nights they thought the world was empty. With each story she told, her voice grew lower, her eyes brighter. She believed they were meant to be together, that everyone else, Brooke, Taylor, even Deacon's daughter, was an illusion. She whispered that if he left her, everything he had, his freedom, his honor, his job, would vanish because no one in the world could love him the way she did. Deacon couldn't speak, couldn't protest, his body was weak, his mind trapped between two worlds. One was the reality that was suffocating him, the other was pity and fear for the woman before him. Sheila was no longer the person he knew. She was darkness dressed as love. Sometimes, on sleepless nights, he saw her standing by the window, the moonlight on her face, her eyes like black pits. She whispered to someone who didn't answer, then turned, stroked his hair, and said that no one could take him, not even God. Around town, news of Deacon's disappearance spread. Brooke was furious. Taylor was devastated. Hope was bewildered. But no one knew that Deacon was still alive, and even alive, right in the arms of the man who held him captive with deadly love. Thomas and Steffi heard the news, and their anger was renewed, because they believed that it was Sheila who had caused Deacon to lose his mind, sending Taylor spiraling into danger again. Everyone rushed to search, but Sheila was gone, as if she had never existed. And in the house where darkness and madness merged, Sheila still cared for Deacon like a devoted wife. Every morning she opened the window to let in light. Every night, she turned off the lights and sat next to him until he fell asleep. But for Deacon, every waking moment was a nightmare. He dreamed that he was buried alive, hearing Sheila laughing above. He found himself walking out the door, only to realize that there was no other world outside. Every time he tried to resist, Sheila would cry, hold him tight, beg him not to leave her. And in that weakness, Deacon couldn't kill the pity. He realized it was killing him every day. On Saturday night, Sheila placed 2 glasses of wine on the table. The candlelight fell on her face, creating a distorted line between light and shadow. She told him softly that if the world didn't understand them, they would leave the world. Deacon felt his blood run cold. He understood that Sheila's love knew no boundaries, that she could do anything, even destroy them both. When she took his hand and placed it on the glass, Deacon felt the horror of fate closing in. But then, in that moment, there was the sound of cars outside, voices calling, lights shining on the windows. Taylor and Hope had found Sheila's hiding place. The night wind rushed in as the door swung open, blowing out the candles, throwing the room into chaos. Sheila stood in front of Deacon, her eyes wild. She screamed something, but no one heard her. Only her hands raised, and the steel flashed. Hope's scream pierced the night, then stopped. When everything quieted down, Sheila was on her knees, her hands shaking, blood on her arms, her eyes vacant. Deacon, wounded, tried to reach out to her, but it was too late. Sheila smiled, a strange smile, half mad, half serene, as if she finally understood that her love could not save anyone, only kill herself. Outside, the rain fell again, erasing all traces of the stormy night. Deacon was carried into the ambulance, his eyes blurred but still able to see Sheila's silhouette being dragged through the darkness. In that moment, he wondered, is there a love that is born only to burn everything, including the one who carries it? And if that love never dies, will this world still have enough light to guide lost souls like them?